Ooh.
Okay, I'd like to call to order our May the 11th, 2020 Board of Education meeting for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. And also a reminder, our meeting is currently being live streamed on the district YouTube channel. I'd like to move to our approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Gary Anhalt, second.
This is a roll call. Laurel, I'll turn this over to you.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Merschbrock.
Aye.
What am I missing here? Director Newman,
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we'll move to our consent agenda. Are there any items that a board member would like to pull for a comment, question, or a separate vote?
President Humbles,
Yes.
I'd like to just comment on BA-20-312. It's the tabulation for the buses. One of the things that I noticed in our agenda was that we were not taking the lowest bid on the buses. So I just wanted to make a point for the public that there is a reason that we're not taking the lowest bid. The bid that was the lowest actually required us to pay some extra fees in order to access some software. And so that's the reason that we're not taking the lowest bid. Actually, the second bid over the long term will be much more financially attractive to us. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knew our reasoning on why that was recommended that way. Thank you.
In addition,
Oh.
Scott Wing is also with us tonight.
I'm gonna board
You had any
meeting.
additional comments that you wanted to make?
Thank you. I can eat later.
Hi, this is Scott Wing, Director or Manager of Transportation, and what appeared to be the lowest bid, Thomas came in at $973,143. However, they required us to purchase software at $1,000 per year, and on the life of a bus, which is approximately 12 years, that would run us around $985,000. So school bus sales, factoring in the cost of the software, school bus sales was the lowest cost, $975,000. We did have advice from our legal counsel, and they gave us approval, that a thumbs up, that was okay to do that.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So
So
moved.
moved, Gary.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion at all? This will require a roll call vote. Laurel, I'll turn that over to you.
Thank you. Director Merschbrock,
Aye.
Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Unmute.
I think she's,
She's mute.
I'll come back to Deborah.
Okay.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Newman.
Aye.
Let's see if I can help Director Garlock out here. I don't see her up here. Well, Cindy,
She's muted right now. I can see
Yeah.
that she's muted.
let's see if I can unmute her. I cannot unmute her. So Cindy, could you just give us a thumbs up? There you are. Very good.
I can't see you, but I'll try to fix that here.
All right, thank you. And President Humbles.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Director Borcherding, aye.
I'm sorry, Director Borcherding.
That's fine.
Very sorry about that.
Next, we'll move on to administration. We have a resolution to schedule a public hearing on May the 26th, 2020 for the purpose of the fiscal year 2019-2020 budget amendment. Dave, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you, President Humbles. Yeah, the budget amendment is required if you feel like you're going to exceed any of the four categories of the main categories in the budget, which is instruction, support, other non-instructional, and other category. And we typically do a budget amendment every year, and we tend to amend our budget to account for unanticipated miscellaneous income and to allow for us to tap into some of our fund balance. In this way, we are able to amend our budget without a fear of exceeding any one of those four categories. And so this year, one category, the other one, it's a big significant increase in what it has been in our initial budget. And majority of that is due to the refinancing of bonds, and also with the Coolidge construction kicking off here, the new elementary on the Coolidge site, that requires us to amend our budget. So that's the reason for us bringing to the board tonight. And we have to legally have that done by May 31st. And so we are setting the public hearing tonight, and we'll have a special meeting on the 26th to amend our budget.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Do we have a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
This is a roll call. Laurel, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. Director Anhalt,
Aye.
Director Garlock,
Aye.
Director Tominski,
Aye.
Director Newman,
Aye.
Director Borcherding,
Aye.
Director Merschbrock,
Aye.
President Humbles.
Aye. Next, we'll be moving to learning and leadership. Last on our agenda tonight is an update from the administration on the district's tech plan and virtual academy. I'll turn this meeting over to Craig and John.
Thank you, President Humbles, and I'll hand this over to Craig in just a minute. But as you all know, we launched a technology plan a couple years ago and started that work this year in implementation. However, our current environment has presented some new opportunities for us to reconsider our technology plan timeline, and Executive Director Barnum and Executive Director Rice have some members of our leadership team to present some alterations to our plan in order to best support our vision of every learner future ready. And as we consider the pandemic that we've been living with, it has certainly presented learning opportunities for us and better ways for equity and access, which is what our technology plan is all about. And also looking forward to updating you on our virtual academy efforts that have gotten more robust this year, and thinking about ways in which we can consider that as we move forward for innovative practices to serve all of our children in Cedar Rapids. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Executive Director Barnum.
Thanks, Superintendent Bush. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here quick, so bear with me while I switch over and do that. Actually, helps if I hit the button to share screen. There we go. So I'm excited to talk with you tonight about some updates we've made to the technology plan. As you know, that plan was rolled out. It's a 5-year plan, and it's extremely robust, and I've always said aggressive in all the right ways. The COVID emergency has caused us to be a little bit more aggressive than we had even planned to be, but I think that's largely a good thing. I think it's an example of one of the ways we'll come out of the other side of this thing even better than we went in, which is exciting. To help me share this information, I've invited Ryan Reitstrom. our Director of Instructional Design and Access, and Jeff Lucas, our Technology Manager. And they're going to speak up to a couple of slides here in just a minute. But the first thing I want to talk about when I talk about our tech plan is that that we've rooted it in the improvement framework that we use across the district. So it's important to know that the work we're going to be talking about tonight is based upon a leading indicator in the high reliability schools framework from the Marzano Institute for the indicator 1.8, which is technological resources of the school are managed in a way that directly supports teachers and students. And that's certainly what we're trying to do with this plan. So it's good to know that we're lined up with that and trying to maintain that bit of coherence for the district. We put the next slide up, which is actually probably in my mind a little out of order, but I want to jump right into this because I know this is an area of interest to our community and our staff and our kids and our families. And so I want to jump right here. This has been a significant challenge, as you can imagine, having internet access and setting that up for our families. There are a number of things to consider here with access that sort of make it multidimensional and kind of a difficult thing to get a handle on. The first is that we have to make sure that the kids have a device to go with them. And at the high schools, we did that last year. We sent out, over 5,200, 5,300 Chromebooks to all of our high school kids. And as we did that, we received a grant from Sprint called the 1 Million Project Grant. And with that, we sent home, it's actually a little lower than that's like 335 hotspots. So we'll have to correct that on the sheet that we sent home last year and were implemented across the district. As far as we could tell, we asked questions on our annual verification, and we certainly listen anecdotally for families who tell us they're in need. But this seemed to meet the need up until the pandemic. At the middle school, I'm going to skip right down to that really quickly. We'll be set to roll out, it's a little over 4,000, 4,200 devices to our middle school kids in the fall. The devices are here, but we don't have the carrying case or the protective cases, and we need access for our teams to get into the building to actually do the work on the devices. But those are here and ready to go. And we're also thrilled that Sprint gave us an additional 325 hotspots to meet the needs of those families and that we can access this summer. In fact, we'll make an order for those in early June. We won't get them until later on in the summer, probably closer to the start of school in August. However, we also found out due to the COVID emergency that we have a number of families in the elementary realm that don't have access. And so, as you may remember, we surveyed all of the families in the district to try to determine what the primary method they'd like to be communicated with. And one of the other questions we asked was, do you have reliable access to internet where you're at? And the data we got back there is probably the best data we've had since I've been here. It tends to line up with what our sampling data, and I wouldn't even call it sampling data, our data from verification tells us, which I think is more of a sampling model, which is that, we have still about, a little over 100 families at the high school. These numbers shift a little bit. So if you've heard different numbers, I apologize, but they do shift as we hear more. A little over 100 families at the high school who continue to need access, about 350 families at the middle school, and just about a little over 1,000, about 1,050 families at the elementary school level that don't have access. And a couple weeks ago, it's been an ongoing conversation. We engaged with Sprint again around this, and they had offered a deal to sell us hotspot hardware and then place the data plans for these hotspots onto the 1 Million project, which is a fantastic deal. We had made plans to go forward with that with them, and our inside rep said there's no problems, that this was all set. And then we went to place the order, and they said, hold on, we need to reconsider that. So we're kind of in a waiting pattern right now with Sprint on this large additional hotspot order. And that's largely due to what they've hinted at due to their acquisition from T-Mobile, which is sort of kind of maybe thrown some question about how much further they're going to support this. So we've been out there beating the bushes trying to find alternative plan Bs and plan Cs and Ds to meet this need. We have a few ideas. But we're really still waiting to hear back from Sprint. Ideally, we're supposed to get back to us last week, but we're still waiting. And of course, as the longer we wait, the less optimistic we get. But I do want to hold out hope for them for at least a few more days, because if Sprint would come through and allow us to purchase these hotspots and allow us to put them on the 1 million data plan, that saves the district literally hundreds of thousands of dollars annual in data access fees for these. Because that's one of the, as I said earlier, kind of one of the multidimensional hard things about this is that the hotspot hardware is really not all that expensive. It's certainly not trivial, but it's anywhere from $50 to $100 to $120 per unit. But the ongoing data cost is where it kind of gets expensive, just like with your cell phone plans at home. Sorry about that. And so those can run anywhere from $50 to $100 a month per line. And so that does add up when you bring it to scale this way. So the way we're kind of thinking about it now is if Sprint does not come through for us, and we're going to give them a few more days to hopefully let us know, then we'll look at this as more of an emergency situation. And one of the things I let out earlier, which I kind of will set up and let Ryan and Jeff talk a little bit more about, is that we're going to also accelerate the rollout of our student devices for our elementary students. That way we can ensure that our kids have a device, and this would be finishing off the deployment of having them, the access they need at home. And so one of the main things there is that, at the end of the day, we want to be sure that, well, I'm sorry, I'm rambling here a little bit. It's hard when I can't see faces. One of the things that I want to ensure we do is with the elementary rollout is that when we accelerate that, the devices probably will stay at school unless there's a closure for emergency. So we don't anticipate that those devices will go home with kids unless there's a closure. There'll be more classroom devices. And so that kind of shades the way we think about the elementary school hotspot conversation as well. And I hope that connects up the idea that it may just be a one-year thing, which would not be ideal, but that may be what we have to go with if we're forced to move on. And so one of the other things that I need to address really quickly before we move on, I turn it over to Ryan, is that we do have several low-income options for our families with local internet service providers that we've worked with Mediacom, IMON, and Windstream to provide it's roughly anywhere from $10 to $15 a month for access to the internet, which provides hardware and access for a household, which is not a bad way to go either. And so, again, this is really complex stuff, and I apologize for rambling there a bit. But with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Reedstrom to talk a little bit about our Return to Learn plan, as we understand it so far. So go ahead, Ryan.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, so just a little bit about this is Rod Dooley has set forth 5 priorities in our Return to Learn plan from the DE. We are working within priorities 2 and 3, which focus on technology access as well as student learning. So we just wanted to make sure that this is let you know that this is aligned to our Return to Learn plan. So with that being said, we are surveying staff right now that will help us develop professional learning in the spring as well as in the summer and in the fall of how could we, if we have 3 different scenarios of returning to school for face-to-face, a hybrid model or a virtual model, to give them the skills and the attributes necessary to effectively teach in a virtual or a hybrid model, as well as skills that is just effective teaching in general. So just wanted to bring that to light for the team as well. On the next slide, we're going to talk about the device rollouts that's going through. We will continue for next year into year 2 with the high schools with their Chromebooks. This year we went through, the first semester was just an opportunity to allow them to get comfortable with the devices, and we had worked with the instructional coaches, the digital literacy trainers, as well as the building principals, and started doing some walkthroughs about halfway through the school year to measure what we're seeing, if it's aligned to standards line instruction, the effective teaching practices, as well as the implementation of technology. We got all together and analyzed that data to set goals. And we're going to do walkthroughs again this year, but with the closure, we weren't able to. So with that being said, we are working with the instructional coaches to define what standards aligned instruction looks like with digital literacy. And we'll continue that work into the following school year with professional learning and coaching as well. So I'll hand it over to Jeff to kind of talk about the logistics of middle school and elementary schools. Jeff, I believe you're on mute.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, so we have the devices, and right now we're presently just waiting to get back in the buildings, get the devices ready to roll out. Logistically, working with the schools is where we're setting presently, figuring out timelines of when they'll be delivered, where they want them delivered, how we're going to hand them out. And right now, we're looking to have those plans pretty much in place by the end of this month, and working with each school to finalize those and set up any other feedback, follow-up information, questions that come in from families as we get closer and closer to those launch dates. So those devices will go out to 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, and they're the exact same unit that we sent out to the high school students. Those devices were very durable this year. We didn't have very many problems with them at all. Overall, very happy with them. And then, as Craig mentioned, we're following up and escalating our elementary school plans. We're also looking at the same Chromebook going out as low as, I believe we said, 1st grade. And then we have a discussion with elementary administration to try to figure out what that looks like as far as rollouts, inventory, and just general ideas on how staff are going to be able to adapt to this plan. Kindergarten and pre-K, we're looking more of an iPad rollout simply because a lot of the software that those students that age are using is better designed for that iPad, or is something they're already accustomed to using. So rather than rip it out and change it all, it just makes sense to stay at an iPad at that level. And as Craig also mentioned, those devices will stay in the classroom unless there's another COVID shutdown. I believe that covers it.
And one thing to mention too is that we are planning on May 19th to have a virtual middle school digital literacy night. So we're going to do a live stream Google Hangout that will go out via social media with the Google Meet link so that parents can do that. If you guys remember last year, we went to all 4 high schools and did a digital literacy night to explain to parents the process. We'll continue that this year. We'll do it virtually in the spring, and if necessary, do it again in the fall. But just wanted to put that out there for the middle schools.
So thanks, guys. All that being said, it's a very busy spring for our team. And there are some things that we're just thinking about as sort of, things that we're kind of wrestling with. And certainly one of them is that, we're looking at approximately a distribution of, it's going to be a little north of 12,000 devices potentially rolling out the door this spring when you include the middle school rollout with the elementary rollout. And that's just a lot to get ready and to get rolling by around the time school starts. So we're going to do our best to get that done, but that may be a real significant challenge to get those all set up here and ready to roll by the first day of school. But we're certainly going to do our best to do that. The other thing that we're having ongoing conversations about is sort of the scale of both the technical support and the professional learning that goes around that. We're kind of accelerating things a year faster for the elementary. And so we want to make sure that we continue to honor and work through the processes we've laid out with our high school teams and the plans we've laid down with our middle school teams, while at the same time trying to bring our elementary folks along in a way that makes sense so that we get everybody rolling along at the same pace. And that's going to be a significant challenge, as you might imagine. And then finally, I always put this one up here for any of these kind of conversations because it's just always kind of hard to know what the equity question looks like. We're doing our best. We ask that question and have for years on our annual verification. And as I said, we anecdotally listen, and I think we got the best data we've probably seen with the survey that went out, about a month or a half ago around the continuous learning plan. But even that data is not totally perfect in that, some of the responses we got there were for people who were sheltering in place in other places that weren't their homes and things like that. And so, we're continuing to work on that, and it's a little hard to get our arms around. But our hope is that we can purchase enough devices, certainly to leave a sustainable plan in place for grades 6 through 12, and if nothing worse than an emergency plan for pre-K 5 if need be. So with that kind of wraps up our portion of the presentation. Our slide deck is done, so I'm going to give John and Christina a second to get theirs up and going, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we will take some questions here at the end, but it looks like they're ready to go, so I'm going to turn it over to John and Christina.
Thank you, Craig. Craig, can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? You're the only one I can see on my video. Thank you, sir. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. I'm John Rice, Teaching and Learning, and I'm joined by Christina Dvorak, one of our wonderful teacher leaders. Christina supports our extended core areas of music, art, PE, world language, as well as Virtual Academy and homeschool. So she's joining today to share a little bit about Virtual Academy. We're going to organize our presentation just with past, present, and future of Cedar Rapids virtual programs. Prior to this school year, there was an online program in Cedar Rapids, but it did have very limited enrollment. It wasn't branded any particular way, and it was really limited to only students with health or safety issues. And so we only had around 20 or 30 students using it. At the same time, we had quite a number of students open enrolling out of Cedar Rapids and into two of the state-approved programs of CAM and Clayton Ridge. And when we would, and my office receives the open enroll paperwork, we'd ask them, why are you leaving? And they would say, we need an online option, and Cedar Rapids doesn't have one. So at the same time, we had an underutilized online learning program that was limited in nature. We had many students looking for that option in our community. And so this past year, we rebranded and grew the program and opened it up as Cedar Rapids Virtual Academy. And you may remember this from a board presentation last year, but the idea was to grow our program to at least 50 students and hopefully more, and to see if we would fill a need within our community if we opened it up to 50 seats. And so we expanded this year to have teachers at each of our local high schools participate, and opened it up to all high school students in Cedar Rapids. And so anyone could take the class, and that meant students who needed an extra space in their schedule, and so they were taking it online so they could work at their own pace. This was students who were exchange students, whose families were moving out of the state for a short amount of time. So many students who otherwise would have left our district and open enrolled elsewhere, they were able to stay here and have these options here locally at their local high schools. So some of the highlights were opening to all students, having access to content area teachers, and we increased the number of courses. And I'm going to turn it over to Christina to tell you the rest.
So because of the way that we laid out the Virtual Academy, we were able to provide some pretty nice benefits to students. First, students are still part of their resident high school. So that means that they can continue to participate as much as they like in programming there. We've also made an effort to hire teachers in each high school. So every student has easy access to a teacher for assistance or to take exams, and wherever that's most convenient for them. We follow the traditional school calendar. So students have flexibility within that time frame, but they still have a beginning and an end, just like the other students in traditional courses. And since we've opened it up to all students, we've been able to create some flexible course options for students. They can take one class, they can take two classes, they can take their full load. So it gives them some options there. And we've experienced and continue to expect a cost savings as students stay in the district rather than open enrolling out to those online programs. This year, we experienced a significant growth in numbers in the program. As you can see, we doubled our numbers from fall to spring. The last column there that shows 4+ classes, those are what we consider full-time students, any students taking between 4 and 6 courses. And while we have students from all the high schools, you can see Kennedy is leading when it comes to students enrolling in the program, especially for spring term. When we're thinking about the future of Cedar Rapids Virtual Academy, we have a few ideas in mind to grow our enrollment. One is with students encouraging them to take an online class during high school. That would give them the opportunity to experience online learning before they move on to college or post-secondary training, where they're more than likely to experience something like that. And we also plan on marketing to those students who are open enrolling to CAM and Clayton Ridge. So those ones that have already been approved out, we would like them to come back. We've hired a full-time lead teacher for the fall, and we'd eventually like to have a full-time staff. We're constantly adding courses. We're adding electives and advanced courses to the core classes that we have. This includes world language. So next year we will have Spanish as a language for our full-time students. And then another goal is location. We'd really like to have a central location for students to meet, especially students who are the full-time online students, so they can meet and work with each other and get help from teachers and have kind of that social aspect to this experience.
And with the onset of the COVID-19 concerns, there is a process that we would like to consider for state approval. There are only 3 current approved online providers across the state. That's Des Moines, CAM, and Clayton Ridge. And we would like to seek state approval for the Cedar Rapids Virtual Academy. That would essentially create the Virtual Academy as a separate school if we wanted it to be that entity. So almost like a 5th high school. That would allow other students to open enroll into there, but would give us many more options in terms of required learning. If we needed to be fully virtual, we could work within some different seat time requirements, and students could work with varying schedules. And again, would allow students to open enroll in should they need to do that and work here in the area. There is not anything in the Cedar Rapids kind of larger metro area like this. And so this would be something very distinct and special here in the area. So that is something we're considering given all that's happened. So thanks for giving us a few minutes to talk about the program.
Well, thank you to all the presenters. And obviously, we learn to train as we go, given any circumstance. And so obviously, it's what I'm so proud of is that Cedar Rapids Community School District, we outlined a really robust strategic plan that had these efforts in place. And now, given our circumstance, we have potential opportunities to accelerate those. And so that also comes with resources. So we have to learn how we want to delegate or redelegate our resources. As you know, we are getting additional funding under the CARES Act, and that's under the umbrella of the CARES Act is called ESSERS, which is the Elementary Secondary Schools Education Support Plan under the CARES Act for some funding. However, that has to cover all of our COVID costs, and it is a one-time funding branch. So we have other avenues, but I'm trying to think creatively about how we can support these plans, but open up to the board for questions for our presenters.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank all the presenters. You provided us with a lot of additional information, and it's nice to see how you've accelerated access. I mean, the iPads for the elementary schools, and that you're also looking into our low-income families so they can get access. And my question is, even though it may be $10 to $15 per month, what would happen if we had families that could not even afford that? Is there some way we can assist them?
Right. Well, that's and pardon me, I didn't feel very articulate during that portion of the presentation. So that's a great question. So what our data tells us is there's probably about 1,000 families in the elementary region, grade levels that would fall into that category. And so what we would love to do, if Sprint comes through and allows us to purchase the hotspots, they can connect up to 10 devices to that hotspot. It's filtered for content so that to comply with federal regulation and code. It's at no cost to the family and no cost to the district. So it's a fantastic thing if we can get this done. And that's why I'm holding out hope beyond hope that Sprint comes through after this T-Mobile merger gets finalized and says, yeah, we're gonna honor the plan we laid out earlier this spring. Now, if they don't, one of the things that I'm interested in is seeing if we can work with another vendor. And we're beating the bushes right now to see if we can find other vendors who will work with us. And we've got some that are saying things like, well, we'll sell you the hotspot and we'll give you data for, $20 a month. I'm wondering if we could do that. And what Jeff and I are really looking at, Jeff Ryan and I are really looking at, is how could we do that maybe for a year for those elementary families. Now, understand that in grades 6 through 12, we'll have deployed over almost 700 hotspots this year, which again meet that need and tells us it's about on target with what our data tells us. So those are sustainable. We'll do those year after year. It's the elementary that frankly has me the most concerned right now. And if Sprint would come through and could come through to do that, and they've been such fantastic partners. I don't mean to throw any shade at them if it comes off that way. It's a little frustrating because we have such a clear need. If they would come through, then we would have a sustainable year-to-year plan with this. I did throw out the low income options just as another way for families to access that service as sort of another menu option. But ideally, what we'd like to do is have some guaranteed devices we could give out from the school.
President Humbles, this is also a discussion at the state level. And there was a task force that was assembled to help create support for schools as we created our continuous learning plan. So as you know, they enrolled that and we had options for the continuous learning plan. They're starting a second task force. Actually, the discussion started today for representatives around the state around how we can better support both our metro areas as well as rural areas for internet access. So that is a discussion at the state level too.
I'm glad to hear there is discussion happening at the state level because I do value Sprint as a partner. I think they're doing some really fantastic work with us. My concern there would be around sustainability. So if Sprint would provide these hotspots and this access now, what happens next year and the following year and the year after that when we're trying to continue down our path of virtual instruction?
Yeah, the good news is that the Sprint grant is ongoing. And so we've had it this year, we've got it next year. They've committed to that. So, there's always, certainly if they pulled out their support from the grant, we'd have to look for other options and other partners. But right now, for the foreseeable future, that's sustainable. And that's the thing we're sort of targeting. And that's frankly why we're most interested in them for our elementary solution too. That being said, this is, I hope that one of the conversations that comes out of this from a little larger level than the district level is that we, we already have some universal access legislation out there around phone and with other utilities. I would hope that maybe there would be a larger discourse around the importance of internet service as a basic necessary resource.
Other questions from the board?
This is Jen Newman. This is all really exciting stuff. So thank you for presenting tonight on this. A couple questions on the online learning plan. Actually, one of my daughter's friends just graduated after completing that program. And, for her, life didn't change a whole lot from an education perspective when the pandemic hit. Is this something that can serve as a model for other online learning should we be in this type of situation next year being this fall or, next year being 2021? And is there any future plans to expand to either middle school and K through 12? I noticed that Clayton Ridge is K through 12. I didn't know if that was potentially in the plan somewhere down the line.
Yeah, great question. I'll start with the second one first because that's the one I remember. We did add mid-semester an option for 6-8 students, knowing that we had some needs there. So we I think added 5 or 6 students. Christina may correct me, but in the single digits. And there is an option to continue that. The barrier to growth or the opportunity for growth is really the number of staff we have. Each staff member can support about 50 students in a given class as their class load. And so right now we've got 4 teachers each with a capacity of 50, so we can have 200 classes, but you can see we're even pushing that boundary. And so to the extent that we continue to hire some more teachers on some contracts and grow that, we can grow the program even further. I don't know about the K-5 level as much. The current provider we're working with is one of the state approved vendors that's focused on 6-12. So we'd have to think hard about doing it K-5, but certainly an option. And would you mind repeating the first question?
Oh, like I remember the first question anymore. No, I think it was around, could this serve as a model if we faced another situation like what we're in right now? Can we expand that? I know that some teachers adapted very easily to some online learning, and some teachers, it was more of a struggle for, does this give us opportunities to provide some training and show that it can be done?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely yes. Making this a state-approved program gives us additional flexibility, but even without that approval, we have teachers who are kind of experts now in working in an online environment and supporting students virtually, and certainly can continue to do that.
Thanks. I'm super proud of the district for taking this step right now.
Thank you.
I just have a question. If there's any indication that the Department of Education will reevaluate requirements to become accredited for districts being able to do virtual instruction or online learning.
John, you can go first and I'll be your backup.
Yeah, I think I haven't seen that change on their website where we do the application. Christine and I have both written most of the application, and there doesn't seem to be any changes recently, but I'm sure it's part of the conversation given everything that's going on.
Yeah, that is part of the conversation with this task force. Is not just about internet access, it's also about the learning access and online opportunities. And so when the pandemic hit and there was the discussion of online learning, I think everyone has a different concept of what that might mean. But under the state guidelines, online learning really is those folks that have met those requirements, and those for those 3 districts of CAM, Clayton Ridge, and Des Moines. And so we were limited with what we could do. All districts were, which is why they put the task force together to say, okay, here's continuous learning options instead of calling it online learning options. Because the continuous learning didn't necessarily have to be online, it could be in other formats. So I do think that this task force that's being assembled is taking a deeper dive. I just transparently, I think we're a little behind some other states that have taken leads on a state vision around online learning and what that might mean. And so when John Rice was speaking of the state approved list of online resources, we have that, but it still gives districts quite a bit of flexibility with the resources that they choose. So it is a delicate balance. We certainly want some options, but it would be nice to have some comprehensive programming with support from the Department of Ed, and they're definitely moving in that direction with this task force, it sounds like. And our representative from our area is coming from Grantwood AEA. And we have input as superintendents from our districts to that task force.
I have a couple questions about staffing. This is Cindy Garlock. If I understood John and Christina, what you were saying was that we currently have 4 staff. Is that correct? That are doing online, the virtual academy?
Yeah, we have a teacher for each of the content areas. So we've got a LA teacher, a science teacher, a math teacher, and a social studies teacher.
Okay, so is that their entire teaching responsibility then, is the virtual academy? Or are they teaching traditional classes as well?
Yeah, they're all full-time teachers, and this is a short-term contract in addition to their duties.
And we have one retiree who is doing this as well.
Okay. So how do you see this impacting our current classroom teachers as we expand this? Will our teachers be asked to do some traditional teaching, some online teaching, and how do we determine their student load? Because you were mentioning one staff to 50 students. And how does that compare to how we're determining teacher load now? Do you get where I'm going?
Totally.
I want to make sure that we're treating our teachers equitably, and just because they've got students off in technology land, that we're not giving them more students because they're not literally in a classroom with them. So have we thought through any of those situations yet?
Yeah, thank you for raising those. Some of those are things we're going to have to sort out, but in terms of the current staffing, we looked at the Des Moines model to determine teacher load and said, Des Moines, how are you doing it? How are you allocating staff? And then also looked at our online delivery model. And so the company we partner with is called Edgenuity, and Edgenuity's lessons are fully taught by another teacher across the country who has already filmed their lessons and has created all the content. What our teachers do is support students with it in kind of a tutoring situation and also grading assignments. So there may be a wonderful English language arts teacher from New York who's filmed this lesson, but when it comes down to grading the writing, that teacher in New York is not grading 100,000 assignments from across the country. That's our local Cedar Rapids teacher who's able to do that. And so given that the responsibilities are different from a typical classroom, whereas you're more tutoring and grading assignments and keeping students on track, we piloted this model of 50 students to a teacher and think it's worked out okay. We've had a couple teachers even say, I could take a few more kids too, but we want to be very mindful of that and don't want to push it unless we have greater need. And I think we do want to hire additional short-term contracts coming up to grow the program. If we keep hiring a couple more teachers and then keep filling up with all those students, then maybe it is time for us to rethink how we do this full-time. So totally open discussions down the road.
Okay.
Director Garlock, in addition to John's sentiments there, thank you, Mr. Rice. Something that Ryan Reedstrom was discussing earlier too, in regards to the professional development, I think you're spot on, and that we're really going to have to think about everyone getting a little more nimble of how to support kids with online, especially if we should be put into this kind of circumstance again. We want everyone to have a little more comfort to support our kids from a distance if necessary. So I think that what we might be looking at is obviously baseline professional development for everybody in digital literacy within their classroom, but also away from their classroom. And that if we could provide a continuum of options, I imagine it could provide more flexibility, not just for kids, but for staff as well. We are probably a little ways away from that full continuum, but right now, virtual academies is one hood, but then you're right, the majority of our teachers are not living underneath that hood. So giving them the support over time so that they have comfort. And then maybe over time, folks they'd want to have a section of online courses, and then we could provide those opportunities for students even within the master schedule.
Okay. Just one more, well, maybe more than one, but one just personal question about the curriculum. You said that whatever it was.
Edgenuity, it's like ingenuity with an ED.
There we go. Are there, particularly in the science classes at the high school level, I know labs are an important component of any high school level science class. Is there some sort of similar lab component of online learning?
Christina, do you mind taking this one?
Yeah, the labs are all interactive virtual labs. We've talked about the potential to have like a checkout kind of kit for kids to kind of actually have a hands-on lesson. And I think that may be something down the road as we have more teachers working on this, that could be an option. But right now, everything's virtual and interactive in the Edgenuity program.
Okay.
And Director Garlock, we take each class and work with our content specialists on science and social studies and English language arts to modify the class to where it's appropriate for Cedar Rapids, whether that's changing the pacing of it or putting standards in a different spot, or supplementing it with additional assignments if we think it needs that. So we do have some flexibility there.
And you said there are 24 courses in the 4 core areas, but we don't have anything beyond. The Spanish is coming, but nothing in business or any other area outside of the core.
We have a few electives right now. So we have some foundations of art class, an art history class, PE. So we do have a few electives outside of the core.
Okay, good. Thank you. I appreciate your responses.
Yeah, and the bulk of the students taking classes said they wanted core courses, but if we want this to be a full-time option, we've got to make it lots more course options, and so certainly a growth area as well as more students show interest here. We don't want to we didn't want to grow the program and hire 10 teachers and then not be able to fill the capacity, and so this was more of a trial year. We didn't even advertise this to schools. We just said, we're going to do this with 4 teachers. Let's see how it goes. And by spring semester, capped out. And so it's really exciting, but gives us more to think about.
Do you have any idea about the motivation that kids have for the virtual academy? Why are they there? Why do they find this appealing?
So some of the students that are there full-time do have extenuating life circumstances, such as dad's moving to Indiana for 3 months for work, and I want to be able to stay in my school so I don't have to transfer school several times. So there's still a WASH virtual kid. A student who was a foreign exchange student going to Germany wanted to be able to take U.S. history because they don't teach U.S. history in Germany, and so online option right there. And then there's many students who are, for medical reasons, needing to take classes. But there's also plenty of students who say, I really wanted to take U.S. history. U.S. history is really offered at my school only twice, and I also had to take band and this. Okay. So this gives me an extra, it's almost like a flexible schedule that you can take. So.
Yeah, I can see that it would give kids an option to take more courses that they couldn't normally fit into their schedule, for sure. Thank you for
Do we have other board members with any questions at all?
Gary, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. A comment about the online learning and then a question. A number of years ago, there was an experiment with an online class at Washington, and conversations with the teacher that was teaching it was when we started talking about class load. One of the things that surprised her how much more interaction there were with students when they didn't have to physically in front of class ask a question or whatever. She was fielding many more questions and interactions from students, which consumed some time. So I found that very interesting. Now for our question, where are we, how are we handling the turn-in of the devices at the high school level? And also I would assume along with it some hotspots that could be rotated down as we move on.
Yeah, thanks, Director Inholt. I may let Jeff chime in on some of this as well, but we only are going to collect devices from the exiting seniors this year. So that was our plan all along, was to keep the devices out in the field until they're used up or turned in at the end of the run. So we're really interested in collecting those devices, which is helpful. We've been working with the technology facilitators at each high school to develop a plan to get that done. Jeff, did you make it back in? I know he had some internet trouble, ironically. The technical guy did. But Jeff, I'll let you go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. And you can also talk about the hotspot turn in too, please.
So we've we've talked about different ways that we can do this, and we've worked. Each high school has a little bit different process, a little bit different methodology on how they'd like to do it. Um, a few weeks ago, we started a curbside service plan where people, students, staff could bring their devices in, get them looked at, get them fixed, get them sent right back to them. And we've offered that up as an option to collect devices if seniors want to just come to one of those locations, turn in the device, let us check it out, make sure it's the exact device that's assigned to them, put it in a pile, give them their receipt to let them know it's been turned in and move on. So that's one option we've tossed out there. The biggest hurdle we still have is the health concerns. To make sure that whatever we do is not only safe for the students and families that bring the devices back, but also safe for our staff as they work directly to collect them. So we're looking for a little more guidance in that area and kind of waiting to hear some of the governor's comments later this week. And then I believe we'll have more conversations about what's the proper way to proceed. I know some of the other models that are out there involve setting up a building location and maybe allowing an entryway for turn in and a separate exit to leave. I think there's a lot of options. We just haven't formally settled on one yet.
And this is Rod. I know that we're also having discussions. We know that our seniors are going to have to pick up their diplomas and all of their graduation materials. And we want to make sure at least by that date, if they haven't had an opportunity to turn their device in, that it would be on that date as well. So we're trying to marry a couple of things together if we can.
Thank you.
Other questions from board members?
Yeah, if I can, this is David Tominski. First, I want to just thank everyone that presented. I had quite a few questions coming into tonight just about the 3 topics that we were discussing, and so many of those questions answered just from the material that you shared. So I appreciate that. Craig, I think you did a fine job articulating your slides, so no worries there. A question about, like, when we talk about internet connectivity and like the difference between HubSpots and, you know, actually getting broadband through a company like MediaCom or IMON, thinking about cell service and potential dead zones, like with those coverage maps. Have we noticed any of that? Is there any data that you guys have that you could share about Cedar Rapids?
Yeah, so those are great questions. Thanks, David. So first off, one of the things we've done, and this is, you know, I kind of referenced it earlier, it's kind of multidimensional. So kind of one of the things that I'm interested in, if the school is supplying a device or supplying a service, it's really important to me that first off, that we provide SEPA, COPA compliant filtering. And if the Sprint devices all do that, I think that would be an extremely bad look to provide a service that other family members could connect to that wasn't going through that. I wouldn't want to have tax dollars be subsidizing, you know, things that we don't want it to on the internet. And you can imagine what those might be pretty quickly. So all the plans we're looking at kind of have to do with that. And that's one of the reasons why we tend to say, okay, if you want to go to use those Compete to Connect programs through IMON or Windstream, have at it. I mean, you pay for it, that's yours. You can do what you want to do with it. One of the things I didn't mention earlier, and we actually had on the slide, and I actually thought to myself, boy, I need to make sure this gets in there, and I didn't, was that we also purchased an additional 100 hotspots from Verizon that we were able to get their refurbished. They aren't new, but they're good. They still have a lot of life left in them. And then we didn't actually use Verizon for the data provider. Pardon me. We used a different company called Kajit, which provides that COPA SEPA filtering, and ran that out there. One of the things that I think is going to be a game changer, and I think we're on the front end of it, and Jeff may want to chime in here too, is that as we look at more hotspot data, you know, with the hotspots we're buying now are 4G hotspots. But as we move into that realm of 5G connectivity, if you want to, you know, kind of nerd out with me a little bit here, that's I think going to be every bit as good as what a, you know, wired broadband connection would be. And honestly, There are many times in my own house where if my, the fiber connection I have come into the house for whatever reason has a hiccup or goes down, we'll just kick on our phone hotspots, and it seems to work pretty well. So one of the other things I sort of messed up here again, and I want to recircle back to your question because it's a complex one, is that we're also well aware that Sprint doesn't have comprehensive coverage in Cedar Rapids. And so one of the things we're also thinking about with that is that's why those 100 devices we had put it on the slide that they were kind of earmarked for high school, but they're really not. What we'd like to use is you have those be pinch hitter devices for people who go home and say, you know what, I took the hotspot home. I'm not getting great coverage. Here, we'll give you one of these Verizon ones, in the hope that, we're using Khajiit, but it's still piggybacking off of Verizon because the Khajiit service is provider agnostic. So we're actually using Verizon's network and coverage footprint. And that would be maybe one of the upsides if we had to go with an emergency plan, is that we could use someone, let's say a third party, AT&T or USCell to come in. That would give us even more spread on something like that. Again, that's not a great sustainable answer on that, and I don't like it as much, but it may be where we end up.
Yeah, it seems like the first step is to get the connectivity. It's good to hear just even the Verizon almost as a backup, right? If you get home and realize it's not working as good as expected, that you've got some other plans. Your comment about at the home, you get to the point where you've got redundancy, right? So you've got a couple of different solutions, but the first path is to make sure everybody's got at least one reliable solution.
Yeah, I would marry that with the devices. So to my mind, it starts with the device, then it goes to the connectivity, and then you talk redundancy. I totally agree with you.
Right. Question about devices. Have we gotten any feedback from teachers that there's content that they want to deliver that's not able to be delivered because of the limitations of any of the devices?
Sure. And what we're trying to do with that is in most cases, we're getting ready to scale. We ran it in pilot this year. We can run what's called a virtual desktop environment, VDI, and we've bought that to scale out a few hundred connections, and we're looking to scale that to more. So that basically what that means in fancy non-jargony language is that if you've got a program that runs on Windows but won't run natively in a Chromebook, right? We can virtually run Windows through a website on the back end through your Chromebook. And the teachers we've used that through, we've piloted that this year with a few Project Lead the Way teachers, which is CAD, some pretty high end stuff. They've been reasonably pleased with it. It's not perfect, but it's a step in the right direction. Really interestingly, the one thing we can't virtualize legally, and therefore we won't, is anything that's native to the Apple ecosystem. They just don't license it that way. So if someone wants to use, the Mac version of Photoshop or iMovie, we're kind of out of luck there. But our goal is to provide enough other tools that they can do some of that. Jeff and I went around and have met with the business folks, both at the middle school and high school level, a couple of times yet this spring to talk through the scenarios. Again, we met with them last year too. I don't sense that there's any overarching sort of huge problems on the horizon. But we certainly listen to that, and it's there's sort of some change stuff. Certainly people would like to have let's say a Mac lab. I would too. I'd like to have a Mac at home. It's just sometimes not feasible from a resourcing standpoint.
Yeah, there's certainly those fringe examples, but I know sometimes CAD is a fine example where it's like you need to download a piece of software in order to do a particular thing. Are you able to do that? So good to hear. And again, there's iPads in the network, right? So if it's something Apple specific, maybe there's a way to get that type of device to somebody.
Yeah, and it's not like we rule it out. I mean, it just we can't go around, dropping a Mac lab in every application lab out there every time we want to. But certainly we try to work with it as much as we can, and it's a balancing act.
Perfect. I appreciate that. Question. So I appreciate the clarification and just learning more about the Cedar Rapids Virtual Academy. Question about so Earth Science is as I know, one example that students are able to take online. That's not necessarily connected to CRVA, is it?
Yeah, we have an earth science class. I think you're talking about that there's an online earth science.
Yeah, like for TAS, like, you know, my example is like a TASL kid, right? That's taking more science, more foreign language at the high school level as an 8th grader. So their ability to double up on a science, but they're taking earth science online.
Yeah, so the high schools have online earth science, and then we also offer science. So you're actually getting probably twice as many students taking that.
Yeah, because when I saw those numbers, I was curious how many kids might even be just participating in that, and that might actually increase those numbers. So excited to see about the growth of that program. I know that that's one of the challenges, like certainly with the current situation, but you know, just in the future, just, you know, more teachers, you know, being, you know, getting the professional development to be able to participate in that program, more students having access. So just appreciated learning more about that, and certainly the path forward. So looking forward to the clarification from the state on what it takes to get accredited, and seeing what that could do for our entire district. So appreciate the work that everybody's putting in on that front. That's really all the questions, comments that I had.
Other questions from the board, any of the board members?
Yeah, I have a question, and this is steering away from the virtual academy and kind of steering back. It's a question if we're needing to continue with online instruction due to an emergency situation. I'm wondering if there's been an assessment of staff to see if they have the devices and the connectivity that would be needed for that to continue.
If you give me 5 seconds, I can pull up the staff survey that went out today.
And, you know, specifically to address that, we've rolled out staff laptops for grades 6 through 8, and we're just starting the elementary rollout when this all started. Again, pending the ability to get back into the site, we're going to make those devices available to our elementary staff this summer. Now, what we don't know for certain, and I think it's a fair thing to ask, is that we've had a couple of anecdotal cases here or there of people saying, hey, I don't have great connectivity at home. You know, we do our best to meet those needs where we can and try to offer solutions. The flip side is, though, and I'll just own this, and this is my current thinking, so understand that that you know, this isn't a very challenging and sort of, you know, use some fancy language, kind of, you know, paradigm shifting situation for me. But my first reaction is to always give the devices to kids and families. And in the case of the Sprint stuff, we have to. We can't give those to staff. But we're open to those options, and we like to talk them through and listen to what staff are saying. So we haven't done a formal assessment on that piece of it, but the devices will be reasonably sure after this summer. And John, we just did send out a survey today, so I'll let John talk about that.
Sure. And this was a broad all certified staff survey to ask about how the spring continuous learning went. And one of the questions was, do you have reliable internet access at home to perform your job? That went out at 11, and we've already had 630 responses. Only 24 people have said no. And so that's around 96% of staff say, yes, I've got reliable internet to do my job, and 25 or so needing something there. Is that your question, Director Borchkin?
Yes, that does answer my question. I'm hoping that you'll be able to take those 24 people that are having some connectivity issues and provide them with an alternate method so that they can remain successful in their position.
Absolutely. And I believe Craig was going to work on a one-off basis with principals for those staff members to find solutions.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Yes. And maybe tied with your statement earlier about the internet at some point being considered a public utility kind of thing to broaden the access. But we have the city has opened up some hotspots around the district. I think the Newbo area is one, and there may be some others. How are they doing that? And would it be any feasibility in turning our schools into general hotspots that would, you start looking at concentric circles around each of our sites, we really do cover quite a bit of this district.
Yeah, Jeff and I haven't talked about this specifically yet, Director Anhold. I've thought about that a little bit, and I'm not opposed to it at all. I think that's an interesting idea. My larger concern is I don't want to have a child have to go somewhere else to do what we ask them to do. And so philosophically, what I'm trying to do is deliver, or we're trying to do is deliver services to kids in their homes, rather than say, having to go to a place to complete their work. And so certainly this might be, and this is something that I've kind of, Jeff and I just haven't kicked around yet. We could certainly turn on some of those things. We wouldn't have great coverage out. That's the thing, is really our devices are tuned to stay within the building walls. There is some bleed. But anything we could do to assist, I think it would be fine. And we could certainly look into doing more of that. But my primary strategy at this point is to try to determine the need and get stuff right into the household if we can.
Correct. And I was looking at more of be able to broadcast out away from the sites, the buildings. I know there are some communities that have put hotspots are just line the streets. They're on light posts and so on, and it's providing access through neighborhoods.
Ryan, I have a question. You had mentioned May the 19th, but I didn't catch what you were, May the 19th. What was happening May the 19th?
Yeah, May the 19th will be our digital literacy virtual middle school night. So our middle school families can log on. Craig, Jeff, and I will do a virtual meeting for the family. So we had set up to go to every single building so that families could come in and learn about the rollout for their student devices next year, similar to what we did in the high school, but we're going to do that virtually on May the 19th at 6 p.m.
Are there any other questions from the board?
Yes. Craig, you mentioned something about the challenge of getting the devices out in the next year. Is there anything beyond just the logistical, challenge of getting that many devices out the building that we need help with? Or
no, I think a great question. Thank you. Director Murchlock. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Are you complete your question?
No, I just want to know if there's anything we can do. I think, one thing that this situation has shown is that now is a time when the public is really engaged. Maybe they don't want to be, but if there's anything we can do to help, and get the public on board with that thing, I think people will be on board. So if it's just a logistical thing, that I understand, but if there's anything else that needs to be done,
well, it certainly is a logistical thing. That's exactly what it is. It's a pure volume issue. And yeah, we are thinking about the community. I've been in conversations with folks from True North around possible volunteering around this summer. We're going to explore every option that we've got available to us. The first step we want to do is see what our teams can do with it, because honestly, sometimes it takes a little more to prepare to get other people in. The overhead there kind of gets in the way occasionally. I'm not sure that's what'll happen here. We'll have to get our hands around it. I was totally comfortable with the rollout we did last year of about 5,500 devices, 5,300 devices, depending on how many actually hit the kids' hands that we prepped. Last year we had seemingly no problem with that. We're looking at about a ×2 that, and so that's the only reason why I point that out. And the other thing that has to do with that is the fact that we've got to get the order out the door, which we haven't done yet. We've got to work through our local governance policies around purchasing and those sorts of things. And once that happens, then we're kind of a little bit at the mercy of the supply chain in general. So making sure the devices can get here in a timely fashion, and and then it's just a matter of getting them out of boxes, getting them asset tagged, getting them loaded, getting them staged and inventoried, assigned to a kid, because we're going to assign a device to every single kid. And so it's a lot of stuff. And if we have to get some volunteers or even some temp help in, we'll do it. I'm confident in my team that they can do that. It's not my team, it's Jeff's team. I'm confident in Jeff's team Jeff's part of my team, so I kind of count that in there. But I am supremely confident those guys there are hard workers, really, really dedicated folks. They know this craft and trade really well. And so I think we're going to do it. It just, to me, when I look at the numbers, it's daunting. And so I figure it's safe bringing that up.
And just to, and we a little bit about that too is we don't have people in the ELSC right now. We are shut down, and then when it comes together, according to the CDC and health guidelines, practicing safe social distancing, can we get enough volunteers in a certain area to do all the work, and can we do the work safely when we're starting to stage? So we don't know how long that's going to take. So that's part of the logistical aspect of it as well.
And then I had a couple of questions about the virtual academy. Is there anything, you said we didn't really advertise it very much. Is there anything that changed at Kennedy? It seemed like most of the jump in the spring numbers were at Kennedy. I didn't break it all down, but it just seemed like that at first glance. Is there anything that pushed those numbers up at Kennedy? Is it just word of mouth maybe amongst families there? Or?
Yeah, it really seemed like the Kennedy counselors just jumped on board with it and added students as, maybe offered it to students more than maybe the other schools. But definitely the Kennedy counselors, I think, were pivotal in that.
Okay. And so we just, that's just a matter of getting enough capacity in the program, and then everyone could be doing that if we had the room for it. Mm-hmm. What do the results look like? And are those kids doing anything now in terms of their online classes?
So they followed the same guidelines as they were done March 13th, but some of them hadn't met, hadn't got enough, 50% of their classes completed. So they're still working, just like the traditional students.
And had we been a state-approved program with our own virtual academy, this is something that we could have continued even regardless of the school shutdown. So again, when we talk about additional flexibility, these are the kinds of things that we could have if we were an approved accredited program. Sorry, Director.
And what's the time frame on the virtual academy to really scale it up? How many years is it going to take to have the capacity to, and maybe even get to a situation where, regardless of whether or not someone wants to be a full-time student online, every class either has some online or there's an online class for every student, to prepare them, for that type of work after high school, or even from middle school going into high school. Like, what's the horizon on the time frame on that? Is it going to be 3 years, 5 years to have that scaled up? Pending approval, obviously.
Yeah, it's a great question. Again, we've patterned a little bit after Des Moines being our closest kind of corollary. Des Moines went 1 year from 250 students to the next year having 1,250 students. That is not what we're looking to do. I think we're looking for something a little more manageable and step by step. So our next plan would be hire additional short-term contract teachers to grow our capacity. And if we fill that up again, maybe it is time that we think, well, what would be an appropriate cap here? Right now, we're really trying to make sure that kids that need these classes don't leave our district to take them elsewhere, that we can support them and keep them connected to their local school. The kid that takes their class at CAM right now can't play soccer, can't play football, can't go to prom, can't walk across the stage, and then they have all those options here. But it's a really good question about what we do want ultimately if we want to have a program as big as Des Moines that's attracting people from across the state.
I do think that's an excellent question. And I do think that it's that and environment, and that the virtual academy is this opportunity. But then when we look at over time, I think you're spot on. And Director Garlock asked that question earlier too, of this has given us a fantastic entry point in the learning experience. And scaling it is probably how we're doing it now. But I do think that as we look at also our academic roadmap, next 3 to 5 years, I'd say that's about the right window, Director Merschbrock, that I like what Christina said earlier of an invitation for all students to experience at least one online class in their high school experience, and that they have the direct support in their high school for that experience. The average post-secondary graduate, whether it be through a training program or professional development or college, or it could be over 50% of their learning in the next decade. So we want to prepare our kids for that.
I would like to wrap this up. I hope everyone's questions were answered. And if you have additional questions, you can contact, we have Ryan, we have Christina, we have Craig, Jeff. Did I get everybody? Oh, and John. So if you have any additional questions, but I want to thank you guys for an excellent presentation. And it really provided us with a lot of information and questions we get asked sometimes. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Pleasure to be a part of the meeting tonight. Thank you.
Next, we are going to have a superintendent's report.
Yes.
Superintendent Bush, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, President Humbles, and directors. Thank you for all of your continued support. This board meeting is an example of the engagement that we have with our board and the support you provide our kids in our district. So thank you for tonight's meeting. And again, thank you to the presenters. But I think that this is an exemplar of what we try to emulate as a school district when we think about continuous improvement. This month has provided great opportunities to celebrate so many staff members. It's been Educator Celebration Month, Teacher Appreciation, nutrition workers. We recognize some PE teachers, everyone, essential workers, folks who have just really come, just done at all lengths to support our kids and our families right now. But in addition to those recognitions, some of them annual, Teacher Appreciation Week, for example, it's also School Board Recognition Month. And so the Iowa Association of School Boards, a school board, presents an opportunity for us not only to recognize our school board members and the hard work that they do, but also provide a certificate of the hard work that you've done. 4 of you were new to your role this year, and what a year it has been. So I do have some prepared comments, and we have on the screen is the school board member recognition from the Iowa Association of School Boards. So please bear with me for these comments for our Cedar Rapids Community School Board members. As citizens who serve children and represent their communities, individual school board members face complex and demanding challenges. Yet, few people fully understand the scope and far-reaching implications of board members' responsibilities. This school year has presented many new challenges to the Cedar Rapids Community School District, unprecedented challenges. And our board of directors have risen to each challenge, continually focused on serving the needs of our students and our families. All Cedar Rapids community members should recognize the vital contributions of these men and women and focus attention on the crucial role these elected public officials play in the education of our children. They make a difference for students. Their job is to establish a vision for the education program, design a structure to achieve that vision, assure schools are accountable to the community, and strongly advocate continuous improvement in student learning. That job entails an endless string of meetings and school functions to attend, reams of reports, agendas, proposals, and other information ready to study, and a host of difficult decisions to make. School board members come from all walks of life. They represent every aspect of our community, including professional life, personal life, and geographical location in our community. While they wear many hats in the workday world, school board members put on a collective hat when they get down to business of leading our school district. Board members must pull together as a team towards a common goal, helping every learner be future ready. While they may individually disagree on certain issues, their role as a board is to consistently strive toward that goal of every learner future ready. Board members contribute hundreds and hundreds of hours each year leading our school district, whether crafting policies, revisiting strategic plans and goals, listening to staff and student concerns, or recognizing outstanding programs. Board members always keep their eyes on the prize of student learning and achievement. The time spent in board meetings represents just a small fraction of the hours school board members devote to leading our district. They also work hard at seminars and training sessions to keep abreast the latest trends in educational leadership. They're deeply involved in community activities in their neighborhoods and spend many hours in our schools and extracurricular activities. Their love of learning and concern and care for our students, staff, and community drive board members' desire to lead so students can see their future. During this spring, I can attest both professionally and personally the amount of love our school board members have for the Cedar Rapids Community School District. It is an honor and a privilege to serve with you. On behalf of our district, on behalf of our community, thank you. Thank you so much for what you do for our students each and every day. You are the ultimate volunteers, and we are indebted to you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you all school board members. Thank you, Superintendent Bush. That was very nice. Very nice. And we have such committed board members that our concern is our students and our staff, and as well as our community. And we thank you for those comments. It's not easy sometimes, but we do it because we know it's the right thing to do for our students. So I thank you. Was that it, Superintendent Bush?
That's it. It's all about you.
Okay. So board members, please take note of your school board calendar, and with no further business, we stand adjourned. And be safe, be healthy, and we'll see you soon. Thank you all.
Thank you.